Well, as you can imagine, there is still a lot going on in Israel, and we were fortunate enough to speak to someone who is there. And we had planned this interview before, but now obviously our focus is now going to change. So please welcome from the Israel guys, Luke Hilton. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be with you.
So tell us, what are things like there right now? You just mentioned to me before the cameras came on, you got 50 volunteers, you got 24/7 operations going on. What are the Israel guys up to right now?
Sure. Yeah, just a little background on what's happening in Israel. This past Saturday, this past Shabbat, everybody in Israel woke up to an all-out war. And it is actually the worst crisis that has happened to Israel and the Jewish people since the Holocaust. I mean, those are actual numbers now. It took several days for the enormity of the situation to evolve. But now there's nearly 1,000 people that were all killed just on Saturday in one day alone. There have not been that many Jewish people killed in one day since before 1948. So the enormity of the situation is just astronomical. And as you know, this past Saturday was the end of the Feast of Sukkot. So not only was it a what's called a Yom Tov, which is basically like a Shabbat, but it was also the weekly Shabbat. So nobody knew what was going on at first. It took quite a while for communication to get going. A lot of the news networks in Israel were not operating. Obviously, much of the nation of Israel was not on their phones, on the internet, knowing what was going on. So it took quite a while for people to figure out what was going on. But Hamas, who controls the Gaza Strip, a terrorist organization, invaded Israel in such a way that totally caught Israel by surprise. And now I just found out today, it turns out there was 1,500 Hamas terrorists that infiltrated Israel from the Gaza Strip. They took over multiple towns in Israel's south. Held many people captive, held several towns captive for hours, killed more than 900 people. And now, currently, what's happening right now is there's more than 100 hostages inside Gaza. Not only Israelis, but also foreign nationals. Now we know that there have been more than 10 U.S. citizens killed. And there's about a dozen still missing, potentially killed, potentially hostage inside the Gaza Strip, as well as 6 or 7 other countries who their citizens have either been killed or are still missing and unaccounted for. So the situation is just absolutely horrible. Currently, Israel has more or less cleaned up the situation in the south, meaning that they've gone door to door in more than 20 different towns and villages. They are confident that most of the terrorists have been neutralized and the towns are now clear. There's still a slight possibility that a few terrorists are inside of Israel. But more or less now they are focusing on driving Hamas back into Gaza. And now they have been striking Hamas targets inside Gaza, more than 200 just in the last 12 hours or so. And it remains to be seen whether Israel is going to mount a full-scale ground operation, meaning an invasion of the Gaza Strip.
I guess the complicated question to that is what happens with these hostages that have obviously been brought as human shields to Gaza?
Exactly. And Hamas has already been threatening. There's reports of one hostage that was executed. I believe it's unverified at the moment. Obviously, many Israelis were killed in the process of hostages being taken. But Hamas is already threatening Israel that if they don't meet certain demands, they'll start killing hostages. And I want to make it clear, too, a lot of people are not as familiar with Hamas or Fatah or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which are all terrorist organizations operating here in Israel and in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. Hamas is on the same level as ISIS was in this, especially right now, the way they entered Israel, the way they brutally slaughtered. We're talking about murders, kidnappings, tortures, rapes. It's just horrific. Hamas is definitely on the same level as ISIS. So I want people to know when they're reading the news, this is the level of a terrorist organization that Israel is dealing with right now. Like, that's how horrific it is. But you're absolutely right. Israel is dealing with a very complicated situation. Thankfully, the country, if people follow the news in Israel, they know there's been a lot of division in the last 9 months, a lot of protests for the current government. Israel is currently coming together as one strong country. They're forming a coalition government with the opposition and the coalition. Leaders are coming together. People who were formerly organizing protests in Israel are now calling for the country to come together. They're calling for reserve soldiers to absolutely fulfill their duties. And the other thing is that Israel now has to think about their northern border. It's not just the southern border, because Hezbollah, who is funded, trained, and backed by Iran, has been building up their forces in Lebanon along the Israeli border. They've already shot several missiles into Israel, and there were several attempted infiltrations by Hezbollah. So Israel is now massing a lot of troops in the north as well for a potential invasion from Lebanon by Hezbollah, which is another terrorist organization, much better trained, much better armed, much better funded than Hamas. So a much more serious threat.
And you are in central Israel, and you say that it's fairly quiet around where you are. But you've heard that there are certain needs that maybe are kind of surprising. People might find surprising to learn for the IDF soldiers and just people in general. So what are folks missing? And Rood Awakening is actually helping to fund some things like there. We have boots on the ground there that can help get stuff to people. So what kind of stuff do they need?
Yeah, so we are located, we have a volunteer organization that brings Christian volunteers to serve farmers and small communities in Judea and Samaria. Our organization, as well as the Israel Guys, the studio where I'm sitting now, is located in central Samaria, which is about 1 hour directly north of Jerusalem, 1 hour northeast of Tel Aviv. We are located on the Mount of Blessing, Har Bracha, just opposite Mount of Cursing, Mount Ebal. Because so many hundreds of thousands of soldiers have been called up for reserve duty, they've now been sent to the south and the northern fronts of Israel, which means that many of the communities in Judea and Samaria, which is where I'm sitting right now, are now being left very under-equipped. So we're talking about the local security teams, IDF soldiers who are stationed here, small farms, small communities. Now they're lacking a lot of basic needs. We're talking flashlights, binoculars, night vision equipment, protective vests, drones. And the other thing is that a lot of the IDF soldiers in our area, my wife actually just went to the store and picked up as much food as she could buy to take to the soldiers in our area, because they're being left without food and water, just because Israel is so massively under-equipped for having so many soldiers in the field at one time. There's nearly 500,000 IDF soldiers now who are actively serving in the military for this war front. Unfortunately, many of the ones in our area, it's being left to the local communities and local residents to feed them, to provide them with water, basic necessities. They don't have showers, they don't have laundry facilities. So it's one of the things we're working on right now, is to get as much equipment and basic needs and necessities to the local communities, local security teams, local IDF soldiers who are guarding and protecting this area. I'll just say, too, that this is one of the situations that happen. If people are familiar with what the world calls the West Bank, a lot of the IDF in this past year has been, a lot of the forces in Israel's military have been moved to Judea and Samaria, what the world knows as the West Bank, because of an increase in terrorist incidents and attacks from the Palestinian Authority and Fatah. So a lot of the troops were moved from the southern border and the northern border into Judea and Samaria to help protect the Jewish communities and residents here from the local Palestinian Arab population. So when the attack from Gaza happened by Hamas, they were actually they didn't have enough forces there to protect the southern front. So now they're flipping the situation, taking a lot of the forces to the southern front. And what we're seeing now is the forces that are left here, as well as local security teams, are under-equipped, and also the manpower. They don't have the manpower that they need to protect this area.
So the reservists, I imagine these guys are just have jobs everywhere else. So what is, all of this action to call up the reservist? Is there any concern that that is going to change or somehow complicate supply chains and just basic things that doing their jobs that they had to leave?
For sure, yeah, no, I can tell you, the Israeli Air Force, they sent planes to Europe to pick up hundreds of reservists just to bring them back to Israel. I know reservists that were in the United States, they immediately turned around, got back on a plane. One friend of ours, he just finished his 3 years of mandatory military service. He went to the United States for a vacation after his 3 years were up. He literally landed, got a call, got back on an airplane, flew back to Israel. His parents met him with his bags and his uniform, and he went straight back into service. Another couple, they were in Thailand, they were engaged to be married. They flew back to Israel. They called their friends and family. They got married, and they both separated and went straight to the war front into their military service. So these are the types of things that are happening. There is hardly any family in all of Israel who does not have a father, a son, a husband, a brother who has been sent to military service now. So yeah, like you said, a lot of Israel is semi shut down right now. They're also telling people, if you don't need to go out, stay off the roads. The roads are very quiet right now. They've just told all the citizens of Israel to store 3 days worth of food and water. Obviously, the economy is still operating, and grocery stores are still operating, but they are limiting food supplies and things like that. They're just trying to prepare. We pray and hope that things will de-escalate very quickly, but Israel is definitely preparing for a longer conflict. This is likely not going to be a few days or even a week-long or a 2-week-long war, but this is likely something that is going to continue and is going to last for several weeks at least.
So now when you look at that and you consider those folks who had to basically run for their lives with their pajamas on and nothing there, what kind of calls for help are you getting from just basic citizens? What kind of things do they need other than the IDF soldiers?
Sure, yeah. So we're still focused mostly on our areas in Judea and Samaria. Honestly, the southern situation, we're now in day 4 since it started. The conflict or the invasion by Hamas started at 6:31 a.m. on October 7th, which was this Saturday. It's just now that they're really the situation is stabilizing in the south. Hamas terrorists literally invaded, I think, 22 towns, and they actually held 3 communities hostage, entire communities hostage for more than a day. And it's just now that the IDF is actually clearing out the entire area. They've also evacuated the entire population that's close to the Gaza border. They're in process of moving a lot of those citizens to other parts of the country. So it is so fresh that we don't even know yet. We'll likely know tomorrow and the next day. But right now, citizens are in process of being evacuated. We don't even know, where everybody's going to be housed yet. We don't even know exactly what the needs are, but they likely definitely will be increasing in the next couple of days, and we'll know more information. But as of right now, the IDF is barely just confident that the terrorists have been cleared out of all of these towns in the southern border.
All right. Well, Luke, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've got a lot going on there, so we'll let you get back to it. And just know that we at Rood Awakening are supporting what you guys are trying to do as well. We've got folks donating. We're forwarding that to Israel to get folks what they need. So we're with you. And stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much. We definitely appreciate it. Israel needs the support of Christians all over the world, believers all over the world right now. They can feel it. We're talking to locals here. They're so grateful for things that people all over the world are doing. Just know Israel is strong, and Israel will win this war. They are recovering, but they need your prayers. So please just encourage everybody watching. Pray for those who are injured. Pray for the captives and the hostages in Gaza. Pray for the families who are mourning the loss of loved ones, and pray for Israel's government and the security forces to do what they need to do and to be safe. Thank you so much.
Well, as you heard from Luke, some surprising needs in Israel, like the IDF soldiers. I didn't know about that. Don't know if you knew about that. And as he said, the stores are still open. There's still things on the shelves. But how long is that going to last? If supplies cannot get into Israel, we need to act now. Get those things to the people who are in need. And we have a way to do that through our friends, Nehemiah and Linnell Gordon. They have agreed to be our go-between. We have some dedicated funds coming from a Rood Awakening to them to ensure that it gets to the people that it needs to get to. No administration costs. The people who need this are going to get it. We are ensuring that through having Linnell and Nehemiah on the ground. So if you want to ensure that your funds are getting to those folks who really need it in Israel right now, go to roodawakening.tv/donate. We are ensuring that this gets to the people it needs to get to. Thank you.